Welcome to Sabres Scoop, presented by the Hockey Writers, a once-a-week show covering all things Buffalo Sabres and NHL hockey. We thank you for joining us today, and to make sure you don't miss out on any future episodes, be sure to subscribe to and like the show on YouTube, follow and share us on Facebook, and catch the great hockey content on thehockeywriters.com and on our Twitter feed. You can find us at Sabres Scoop, THW, and everything else at The Hockey Writer. And make sure you head over to morningskate.io to sign up for our daily Morning Skate newsletter so you don't miss out on the latest and weirdest hockey news every day. And yeah, guys, there's no guest for our 20th ever show, milestone event. So you're just going to have to listen to Brandon and I go off on all of this Jack Eichel news. It's time to begin. Brandon, kick it away.
Yeah, it's just as well that it's the two of us because this is a Sabre-centric episode. First time in a long time that we've got this much stuff to talk about. I wish there was some better news, but let's get right down to it. So Andrew Peters, host of The Instigators, he does that show with Craig Rivet, two ex-Sabres there, had Elliot Friedman on. He actually goes on weekly. So he went on the show today at the time of this recording, and he told the Instigators, that is, that the Sabres and the Anaheim Ducks are definitely talking regarding Eichel. So, the main underlying question here is going to be, do we, you and me, Jordan, see a fit there? Does that make sense? Let me elaborate a little bit on some of the key points there. First of all, it looks like Trevor Zegras would be a non-starter in that trade package, according to Friedman. So let's start there. Do you value the third overall pick or Trevor Zegras more in a potential deal? And I gotta say, yeah, I'll let you go first, and I'll give my thoughts on that in a second.
Well, it's quite an interesting point of discussion there, just because I don't know. I mean, this is quite an interesting draft, and Trevor Zegras is quite already an established player. You have to imagine. I mean, he's going to be a full first line center at some point in his career. You have to think the player, a guy like Simone Edvinsson, potentially is probably going to be the third overall pick. There may be a Brandt Clark. I just don't know. So I mean, in my eyes, I would go with Trevor Zegras just because he's more proven, and I think he's probably going to have a higher ceiling than the player you're selecting at third overall.
I would say so too, and I just totally do not agree that he's a non-starter because, like we've said time and again, when Jack Eichel is going the other way, nobody is a non-starter, and it really sucks that we're at the point where people are even questioning that. But that leads into another thing, like if he is a non-starter for the Sabres, do the Sabres look at Jamie Drysdale, the defenseman there, as opposed to the other two options?
See, that's very interesting, the discourse surrounding that, because you wouldn't think so. They have Rasmus Dahlin. By all accounts, it feels like Owen Power is going to be the guy. The only way that happens is if they value Matt Beniers more than Power, and then potentially you could go Beniers as your future first line center of the future. Then you have Dahlin and Drysdale. I mean, the thing about Drysdale though is he was completely shelled in the NHL this season. Looking at some of the micro stats, he was in like the 0 percentile in terms of his wins above replacement. He was playing second pairing minutes when he shouldn't have been at all. It was ridiculous, but Anaheim has nobody, and they're completely just rushing all of their guys there. So I don't think Drysdale would be a part of this trade. I think you're most likely going to see Trevor Zegras. I know they're saying he's a non-starter. You're going to be seeing him, I think, in this deal.
I think it's got to come the other way too. And like you said, I think Jamie Drysdale might have been rushed into the NHL. Um, and as far as Owen Power, it is an interesting thing because he's a left shooting defenseman. And the Sabres, like you said, already have Rasmus Dahlin, and I'm sure that would be a great addition to the blue line. Don't get me wrong. But look at this makes me think about in 2013 when Seth Jones was the number one projected overall pick, and the Colorado Avalanche just said, no, we're taking McKinnon, and McKinnon was projected like number 5, and it ended up being obviously the right choice because look at the player that McKinnon has turned into. So maybe if the Sabres go with Matt Beniers and people don't think it's a good pick, maybe that's what they think is gonna, he's gonna pan out to be. But I'm not entirely sure. Like you said, it's a total. I just don't know what's gonna happen there. But one more thing to wrap up this Friedman interview. Actually, it's an extension of that. Pierre LeBrun, he talked about how the Stanley Cup Finals don't necessarily even need to be over for an Eichel trade to be made. And you and me were talking earlier. When's the last time a blockbuster trade was made during the playoffs, let alone during the Cup Final? So are we nervous that they're rushing a deal here, Kevin Adams and whoever he's talking with?
Oh God, I really think we are, man. Like I know they have to get a deal done by the end of July. By the sounds, I mean, if they run a top 10 pick in this year's draft, that's what they're going to have to do now. See, if I was them, I would be going for a potential top 10 pick in the next year's draft or 2023. Yeah, I know um, that's a long time from now, but if you're really going to be trading your franchise cornerstone, top 10 centerman in Eichel, you have to be getting good value there. And in terms of the draft classes, even starting next year, they're going to be some of the best we've seen in the past decade. Like in terms of the players like Connor Bedard, Shane Wright, Mikhail Matsov, who's a Russian prospect. These are the players you should be targeting over the next few years and giving yourself the best opportunity. I just don't really think they should be going for a top 10 pick, another one in this year's draft. And I am nervous about the Sabres just because, I have every reason to be. Like, look at what they got from the Taylor Hall trade. When they give themselves all of these obstacles, they generally don't seem to come out on a positive outcome there. So if they rush this, I think they're going to get quite an underwhelming return.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, and with that, we still have more Elliot Friedman news because he was just making his way around all the Buffalo sports stations this week. He went on WGR 550 and made this headlining quote: "The Sabres value this draft more than other teams. The Sabres view it as getting an edge on other teams by knowing this draft class really well." Quite interesting quote there. Obviously, we know their scouting departments only just started to increase from, I believe, the 4 or 5 that were actually working this past year. They claim that they really do know it. So, I mean, primarily relying on video scouting. I guess they've been watching a lot of videos then of these kids.
That's a thing, yeah.
It sounds like the Sabres are looking for a second top 10 pick in this draft. We kind of talked about it, but it really does seem that way. That's what Elliot Friedman alluded to. Do you trust the scouting department to pick the correct players if they do so?
That's the thing. Like you said, I guess if there's one team that knows video scouting, it's this one because that's what they've transitioned to over the past few seasons and pretty much gouged the rest of the staff, gutted it. So, I mean, if they say that they have, a better outlook or a better understanding of the prospects and the players that are available to them at the places that they're drafting, first overall, and then whatever comes after that in the subsequent rounds, then you got to just maybe give them the benefit of the doubt, but only because Kevin Adams is only his second draft. The first draft was a total hard, very difficult one as well. A lot of people got on him for drafting Jack Quinn when players like Marco Rossi
That's
and
what
Cooper
concerns
Petty
me.
were still available. And you've seen Jack Quinn's comparables. I'm sure you've seen that he was actually comparable to Kevin Adams as a player as far as advanced statistics go, which was kind of funny. Or Jack Quinn, yeah. Um, so I don't know. I mean, do I trust them? Not entirely, but having two picks in the top 10 certainly doesn't hurt if a lot of people have called this draft a total wash, and if that's the case, then that's just one extra chance to hit the nail on the head.
Well, Brandon, the thing about this draft, though, is because it's going to be such a crapshoot, as the term everybody's used to describe it, a lot of good players are probably going to be available through rounds 2 to 7. This is probably going to remind me a lot, I think, of the 2011 draft where Nikita Kucherov went in the second round. You're going to see a lot of those surprising decisions. And I don't know, you have to hope with the Sabres scouting department. If they're so confident that they know this draft class really well, they're going to make value with those picks. And because it does sound like they're going to be trading away Sam Reinhart, hoping to acquire a top 10 pick. Do we think that's possible? It does sound like he's being linked to the Vancouver Canucks, according to Paul Hamilton. Maybe they attempt to acquire the 9th overall pick from them. That would be full circle, by the way, because if you remember in 2013, Vancouver actually acquired the 9th overall pick in a trade for goalie Corey Schneider with a deal with the Devils. So that'd be quite interesting. Pretty much a decade later, they'd be the ones trading the 9th overall pick. Do we think there's a potential fit and deal to be made there?
Yeah, Vancouver isn't something that I heard until very recently, probably today actually. And for Sam Reinhart, I do think that's a good fit. One, because I've heard that well, first of all, he's from Western Canada. I think he's from Kelowna, or at least played in Kelowna. And so for him to go back to BC and to play for the Canucks, that would be a really good fit, I think, personally for him. And also just think about where the Canucks are at and what Reinhardt can add to that forward lineup there. I mean, they have good young guys like, Elias Pettersson is going to be an absolute stud. He kind of already is. Bo Horvat is the captain. And to have Sam Reinhart to like interchange on either of the wings or even step into play center if they need, I think that's a great fit. And as far as the 9th overall pick, I think that's fair to ask for Reinhart. Obviously, if we're talking about Eichel, it's got to be top five, preferably that third pick, but we'll get to that. Um, but yeah, as far as Reinhart, I think that would be a good fit. What about you?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. For me, it's either the Columbus Blue Jackets, which our very own THW writer Mark Shag believes is going to be the case. So
Mm,
we'll have to see if Mark's right on that one. I think it's definitely going to be one of those two teams. Vancouver, I mean, we all saw what happened with them. They didn't sign Tyler Toffoli last offseason, which clearly was the wrong decision looking at his
yeah.
performance with the Montreal Canadiens. And they're going to need to try to at least acquire something. And I mean, I don't necessarily know if Sam Reinhart is worth a top 10. I mean, I would say he probably is just on his own. You don't necessarily see this type of trade made too often, though. So it would definitely be quite interesting just to see the value received. That'd be quite good for the Sabres. I mean, I wrote a piece, though. Like, I want to see Sam Reinhart stay. It would be awesome to see a top 10 pick come. And I mean, that's probably more than I even expect, just because I generally have low expectations for this team. But I don't know. I would just preferably just like him to stay because I think you got to keep good players around. I think he is, despite all the reports, a good person for this locker room. I think he's a leader on the ice. I would like to see him stay. He was a mentor for Dylan Cousins this past year. You just have to keep some
Definitely.
of your players around. And we know Jack Eichel isn't staying around. So there is one last little piece regarding him. And Elliot Friedman also had this interesting quote to say, people in the league think that LA Kings are lying about being out on the Eichel sweepstakes, and they are very much in the mix. I would have to tend to agree with them because they've just been in this discussion for like the past year. I'd be very shocked that they actually are out. Do you agree with this quote, Brandon?
I totally do. And I was actually surprised when I saw that they were out because I was thinking, like, well, you know, they have a pretty deep prospect pool. I would say it's one of the best in the league at this moment. Just the way that they've drafted and the way that they've kind of taken these really down seasons for themselves and sort of built for the future sort of on the fly, right? They haven't, they've been bad, but it's never to the point where you're like, oh, they're going to be bad for a decade like the Sabres. It's like, no, like they might have a couple down seasons, but they could turn it around pretty quickly if they draft well. And it's looking like that. So I think they have like, what it takes as far as prospects and draft picks and roster players to be able to get somebody like Jack Eichel. So I'm surprised. I would be surprised if they were out. So yeah, I think they are lying. I think they're totally in the mix. And I think it's them or Anaheim or San Jose is a dark horse. Let's just say every California team is the most likely ones for this guy.
Well, let's continue this discussion. Like, do we really think they're going to be parting ways with the 2022nd overall pick, Quinton Byfield? That's the interesting one. Like, he's obviously the prime guy you would think they would go after just because you got a center replacement there. They have the 8th overall pick in this upcoming draft. What are they moving to get Eichel?
I think it has to be Byfield. Now I've heard Alex Turcotte as well, which that wouldn't be terrible either. But I think Byfield is the one that they want. And look, Byfield, he got some NHL games in, but he hasn't established himself as an NHL player, especially not like Jack Eichel has. I mean, you look at this season, yeah, okay, it was bad, but he was playing injured all season pretty much and still had like 18 points in 21 games. I know only two of those were goals, but still leading the sit. He actually finished, Jack Eichel did. I think he actually finished like sixth on the Sabres in points, and he only played 20 games. So that's something.
Oh.
And before COVID ended last season, he had 78 points in 68 games. Like this is a guy who can be a number one center on your team for the next decade. And if you're LA, I think no one can be off the table.
Yeah, I agree with you there. There's just so many questions that need to be answered. And definitely over the next month, we're going to get to see those questions answered. And take it away, Brandon, because there's still more trade rumors surrounding basically every Sabres player that's on the team at the moment.
And this is another big one, Rasmus Ristolainen. So Lance Lasowski of the Buffalo News, I believe, dropped a bomb earlier this week stating that he thinks the New Jersey Devils, have interest in Ristolainen. That's kind of interesting. So this is according to multiple sources, but the Devils do have the assets, and one of our THW colleagues, Alex Chovancy, sorry, actually wrote an article on this about Ristolainen and what the potential return would look like, and I actually kind of liked it, to be honest with you. But they do have the assets, picks, and prospects that would make a deal work. So I'm gonna throw it over to you, Jordan. Do you think that Risto would be a good fit in New Jersey on that right defense there? Not sure where he would slot in. It sounds like Connor Carrick is leaving as a UFA, so he could play behind or potentially next to, who knows, Subban and Damon Severson. I don't know. Do you think he's a good fit?
I definitely think he is because like they're definitely looking for a power play guy, and I think
Mhm.
Risto would definitely do wonders in that first power play unit if he can get going. With guys like Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Jesper Brad, I'm very high on that player as well. And I mean, honestly, if you can get a second round pick and a prospect for him at this point, I think I would call that a win. And anything above would just be crazy in my eyes because I just don't know. I mean, on New Jersey, I think he would definitely have a decreased role. Hopefully, you have to hope they're not deploying him like a number one defender there,
Yeah.
because if he can get that number 3, 4 pairing type of minutes and get a low event minutes of 5v5, more offensive zone face off starts, getting that power play time, I think you're going to start to see him succeed because he is a talented player. It's not like he
I
isn't
agree.
talented.
Yeah.
It's just it's all in his mind. It's all in terms of his awareness, his hockey IQ. There's always been concerns there, but I think if you really put him in the right situation, that's not Buffalo, because that's not any player's preferable situation. I think you're going to start to see a rebound season from him.
I totally think so. And like you said, a prospect and a second round pick, I think would be a great haul for Ristolainen at this point. His trade value was definitely higher at the end of last season. It was definitely higher in the first few games of this season. But now it's to the point where I don't think the same amount of leverage is there. I have said that you could package Risto and a prospect and maybe a pick for a starting goalie. I truly believe that. If you packaged Ristolainen, Rasmus Asplund, and like a third round pick, you could get a starting goalie from one of the teams. There's a ton of teams with two goalies right now that don't want to lose one for nothing. So in the expansion draft. So I'm saying they should try to pull something like that. I don't think they're gonna, but I really think they should try to do something like that.
Who's the goalie? Like, I think Elvis Merzlikins is a name I'm kind of
Mhm.
shockingly hearing. Like, I'm seeing it on hockey Twitter, his name being thrown around. I
Right.
wonder, like, because they're going to be doing a lot of communicating Buffalo and Columbus by the looks of it over this next month. I wonder if
Yeah.
Merzlikins ends up as a Sabre.
Yeah, him, or it looks like the jacket's like Corpusalo better. So I mean, Merzlikins has shown flashes of brilliance, had a breakout season last season. Yeah, I think that would be great. There's a ton of teams. I mean, the Islanders, I'm not sure what they want to do with Varlamov and Sorokin. The Capitals with Vanacek and Samsonov. It sounds like there's some, you know, bad blood between Samsonov for some of the things from this past season. There's a lot of teams. There really are. Even look at Boston, like Tuukka Rask and Jeremy Swayman. Who knows what's going to go on there? I'm not saying get Tuukka Rask, but you know, there's plenty of options, is what I'm saying. So I could see it happening.
Yeah, definitely a lot of options for this team, and some good news here because the Sabres also signed JJ Peterka to his 3-year entry level contract. He was the Sabres second round pick in the 2020 draft, and you may remember him because he garnered a lot of he garnered a lot of hype playing at the World Juniors last season on the line with Tim Stutzle. Do you think he's such an interesting one because I really don't know what his ceiling is going to be. It seems like he could be a pretty effective middle six winger if he in his prime, if he can reach his ceiling. Do you think there's even a chance he could be playing NHL games sooner than we think? Because it looks like he'll be heading over to the Rochester Americans to play next season. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a few games next year. What do you think, Brandon?
I wouldn't be surprised either, especially if the Sabres aren't very good again. And like I remember specifically when they drafted JJ Paterka, he was actually projected to go late first round. So getting him in the second round, in the early part of the second round, actually considered a steal by most people. So let's just hope that he pans out to be that sort of like late first round talent. Like you said, if he can be a middle six guy who can contribute offensively, and you know, we know those German type players, like big, strong, you know, power forward type players, with, you know, some skill to add. I think that would be really cool. And having him playing in Rochester with the Americans, like adjusting to the North American game, being closer to the Buffalo Sabres, it would be easy to call him up. I think he could be a good injury replacement, and you know, to make his debut. And if he plays well, I think he could stick. You know, even though he's real young, I think you got to give him a shot.
Yeah, you have to hope so. Because I mean, if he can play good on the line with Tim Stutzler on a team like the Germany, and we all saw Team
Oh
Germany
yeah.
last year at the World Juniors, wasn't exactly much behind those two guys. And I mean, maybe you put him on the line with Trevor Zegras if he ends up on the Sabres.
There we
So
go.
who knows? I think he could
Future first
perform
line.
well. You have to
Yeah.
hope so. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
your future first line.
Oh yeah.
There's definitely
Yeah.
going to be such a youth movement at Buffalo, it looks like.
They've got to commit to it if that's the direction they're going. They can't They can't go halfway and teeter in between. Well, let's also get some veterans. No, if you're going to go youth movement, you've got to commit. And I mean, just as well, like 2015 to 16 Leafs, nobody thought they were going to make the playoffs, right? I
It was
mean, they
actually the
had that.
2016-17 Leafs. That 15-16 Leafs.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Nobody
Yeah.
thought they were making the playoffs.
Yeah, that was wrong season. 16 to 17. Yeah. But like nobody thought they were there, but they had all the right young guys and they wanted it. And if the Sabres can put together a sort of young core like that, maybe they have a similar story. I don't know, but we'll see. Before we do the move on to some general NHL news, one positive piece of news surrounding the Sabres to wrap up this otherwise pretty sad and tense conversation about all these players who are going to be gone. The Sabres welcomed 35 children from the Seneca Nations of Indians for an introductory learn to play course. It's I guess part of their just getting in touch with the community, and they did that at the Academy of Hockey at the Harbor Center, which is where the Sabres practice. I do believe there were some Sabres personnel present, so that was cool. They do great things in the community, and just because the Seneca Nation is very prevalent around Buffalo, there's several reservations and establishments downtown and whatnot. That's cool to see. Always getting indigenous people involved. So yeah, I don't know if you had anything to add about that, but
Yeah, I mean, the Sabres definitely are an organization that gets involved with the community. A lot I've just
totally.
noticed from covering them this past year.
Hmm.
They very much take it pride in the charity events they host and the charities they also get involved with. So it's really nice to see, obviously lots of news surrounding Indigenous people that we've seen the past few months. So to see them kind of take charge and do this kind of shows, they're a premier organization in terms of doing stuff like this at the moment. So in
Totally.
terms of a bad season, I think this is definitely a shining light on the Sabres organization right now.
Definitely. Yep. It's good they're continuing that. With that being said, let's reset the show here before we slide into some general NHL news. You are watching Sabres Scoop, presented by the Hockey Writers. So make sure to subscribe to and like the show on YouTube, follow and share us on Facebook, and catch the great hockey content on thehockeywriters.com and on our Twitter feed, which is at Sabres Scoop THW. All right, we're moving into end of season NHL awards here. So some nominees and winners alike have been announced in the past week. Namely, these are the ones I wanted to talk about: the GM of the year and the head coach of the year awards. Let's start with the head coach because somebody actually won tonight. This was voted on just tonight. So our nominees were Rod Brind'Amour of the Carolina Hurricanes, Dean Evason of the Minnesota Wild, and Joel Quenneville of the Florida Panthers. I almost said Chicago Blackhawks, not anymore. The Florida Panthers. And Rod Brind'Amour won. Spoiler alert. So, do you think he deserved to win it? Do you think somebody else deserved to win it? Who would your vote have been for?
Well, the timing for that was just perfect because Brind'Amour signed a 3-year contract extension
Right.
today at 1.8 million a year. So that's awesome to see him stay at Kane because he's just been a lifer there. I actually saw a crazy stat. There's only one playoff series the Canes have been involved in where he wasn't affiliated in any way from the 98-99 season. So it's six
Wow.
playoff games in which he was not affiliated. And he breathes and lives and dies as a Carolina Hurricane there. So, I mean, I think that's a perfectly fine choice there. Dean Evason and Joel Quenneville in terms of Minnesota and Florida. Those teams definitely overperformed, and it's because of their head coaching there. I think that's kind of cool to see. The thing about these lists I always find fascinating is just like getting Greg Wyshynski actually tweeted it out on Twitter. All
Mm-hmm.
the other nominees that ended up
I
receiving
know.
votes. Like I saw Sheldon Keefe was 6. I think he got like 6 second place, 9 third place votes. Barry Trotz was like 15th somehow. He was actually behind David Quinn, who's not even going to be an
This is
NHL
funny.
coach next
Right.
season. So I never understand stuff like that, but that's just NHL voting for you.
I know, yeah. And if I had a vote, I would have voted for Dean Evason. Just the Minnesota Wild, the turnaround that they had, and to take Vegas to 7 games in the first round of this Stanley Cup playoffs. Just I know Kirill Kaprizov was a huge boon to that, as well as Cam Talbot and the way he played this season. But Dean Evason just did a fantastic job, I think. So he would have been my vote. But Brandon is very deserving as well. Carolina Hurricanes have had a bit of an early exit by their standards. They were definitely Cup favorites this season, or at least one of the teams. But congrats to him. And general manager of the year, another Florida Panther, front office member here in Bill Zito. So we had Mark Bergevin of the Montreal Canadiens. We had Lou Lamoriello of the New York Islanders, and then Bill Zito of the Florida Panthers. And this one has not been named yet. Who would you have voted for? Is it these three, or do you have another one?
See, now I'm sure we've all seen the discourse surrounding this on Twitter. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
Mark Bergevin, it had the least got any of those overtime goals. People were talking about this guy like he was going to be fired, and now all of a
Mhm.
sudden he's now being nominated for GM of the year. And the funny thing about the voting for this award actually is it gets voted after the second round in the playoffs. So this is all recency bias being showcased here. Lou Lamoriello, as much as people have taken flack on him, Devon trade obviously acquired Kyle Palmieri, acquired Travis Zajac, made a lot of great moves at the deadline, and I mean, I talk about this. I've talked about this with a lot of the people, like in terms of my other shows and stuff like that. He commands a lot of respect, and I mean, just being able to get Barry Trotz into the organization, it's because he's Lou Lamoriello. And sometimes, like little aspects like that in hockey, I think go kind of unnoticed. And I didn't like how he ended off his tenure as a Leaf, but I don't think it's the worst thing that he's being nominated. I don't think he should win. I really liked what Bill Zito did. I think it's kind of crazy that Julian Breezeball isn't being nominated for this award, considering his
Yeah.
team is currently 16 million over the salary cap, and he somehow legally made that work. He should be in this, and they're going to be poised to win their second Stanley Cup in a row. They've built a dynasty here. Steve Yzerman may have started it, but Julian Breezeball sure is going to finish it. Looking
Oh
at it,
yeah.
so I think it's crazy he wasn't nominated. Joe Sakic, by the way, who Lou Lamoriello lost that Devon trade to. I understand that they got kind of bounced a little bit earlier than expected, but that Colorado team, man, I think you could have still put Joe Sakic there.
Yeah.
Lots of
Especially yeah.
discourse. I don't know. I don't really agree with it. Only Bill Zito I would agree with out of those three names. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, and if you're talking about the Avalanche, like people forget, they won the President's Trophy. They were that much better than every single team this season. Like they were unstoppable in the regular season, and they had quite a run in the playoffs too until they ran into Vegas. And if you want to talk about Vegas too, like Kelly, it's not George McPhee, it's Kelly McCrimmon, right? Is the general
Yes, it
manager?
is.
Yeah, Kelly McCrimmon now. So like, you want to talk about Vegas? Like,
Yeah,
I know
even
they've
them.
been,
Yeah.
yeah, like even him, throw him in there. Mark Bergevin, like you said, it's so interesting because I see so many Habs fans now who are saying, oh, now we're never going to get rid of this guy. Like after the run that they've had, and now he's up for the GM of the year, and a lot of them want him gone. And if you look at the moves that he made, yeah, Toffoli was, money in the bank, but look at Josh Anderson. He hasn't had much of a playoffs at all.
Yeah, that's concerning because he has 6 years left, obviously, at 5.5. I just don't know because of his type of style of play, the injuries that he's obviously received, he's not going to look that great on the latter half of that deal. That's going
Mhm.
to be an unmovable deal. I know Joel Edmondson as well has received criticism. I like the John Merrill signing, and I mean, obviously drafting Cole Caulfield, even though that was kind of a given. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously, you're still the team that drafted him, so I actually
exactly.
do like. I think Bergevin is one of the better GMs in Canada, but I've even seen this discussion like they just get so much of a rope. All of these Canadian GMs, they've been there like forever, literally forever. Pierre Dorian was the last GM that was hired for a Canadian NHL franchise, and that was back in 2018. And Kyle Dubas was just, I believe, like a few months sooner. These guys get so much of an opportunity, and although I like Bergevin's moves, I just think there are better candidates out there.
I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And as you know, we got to talk about actual games. Isn't it crazy? We're talking about all this stuff like it's the middle of the
Yeah.
offseason. There's games being played in the Stanley Cup semifinals right now with two fantastic series going on. So let's dive into each of those with some thoughts here and give our predictions. Currently, the New York Islanders, Tampa Bay Lightning tied 1-1 at the time of the recording, game being played as we speak. How have we thought the series gone so far? The New York Islanders look so strong playing their type of hockey in that game one. Tampa Bay coming back strong in game two. Who's going to prevail in this series, Brandon?
I have to go with Tampa Bay. Just because, and they're actually, I put the game score up, and they're actually, the Lightning are up 2-1 right now, after two periods. So I mean, it looks like they might be able to take this one. But look, New York won the first game. Tampa came back, actually played like they have the potential to play, and won the second game, and they're on their way to win game three right now. And I think game three is pivotal because if they can win that one game, on Long Island, and then whatever happens in game four, they'll be going back to Tampa for game five. I think they'll have all the leverage if they win at night. So I think Tampa with their cup pedigree, and they're just too good. Like, like you said, I think it's got to be them. What about you?
Braden Point, by the way, has scored another goal in this game. He currently has
There we
11
go.
in this postseason run. Nikita
It's crazy.
Kucherov 23 points in 14 games now. And he didn't play at all this regular season, as everybody noticed. It's just absolutely insane. You know, coming from a guy that had 0 points in the regular season, leading the NHL playoff scoring, how crazy, eh? But I don't know. I think Tampa's just a different beast. I think at this point, Vasilevsky's at the top of his game. Victor Hedman, who did struggle in those first 2 rounds, is kind of starting to find his feet, I think. I just don't know, man, because the Islanders are doing this without Anders Lee, which has been so impressive. Quite an underrated factor in all of this. Semyon Varlamov, I really like the playoff as well. That first deep pairing of Pelech and Pulock has been able to shut down most teams and shut down Tampa game 1. I just don't think it's going to be enough. I think Stamkos' point, you know, they're just too much. I really liked Anthony Cirelli as well. The depth on that team is just insane. They're truly made to win the Stanley Cup, and I don't know any team's really going to be able to beat them.
Yeah, and they definitely should, because, you know, they might have to get rid of some pieces this offseason. And I'm not saying they won't be, you know, Cup favorites after the season, but if they have, you know, a sure shot of winning it, it's probably going to be this season too, because they might have to retool a little bit and get, you know, refill some roster holes. But I digress. The other series, Vegas Montreal, that's also tied 1-1. Going back to Montreal, to the Bell Center, and I don't know, are they going to have fans? I know they had a couple hundred last time they played there.
Oh, they're going to have 3,500 fans, actually. Okay. They're increasing it by 1,000.
A little bit more. Yeah, I was just, because I was watching the game the other night, and or actually last night. Yeah, like Vegas, full arena. Oh my gosh. It was, that makes crazy, a difference. Man. That makes a difference.
And Montreal was able to take one of these games too in Vegas. Like the fact that they were able to win game 2, they're in this series now. I know they almost blew another 3-0 lead, which of course notably did in the Toronto series. But I don't know, man. I have a weird feeling that the Canadians are going to be able to. I think it's going to be really close. I think this is going to be exactly. I'm picturing the exact scenario that happened in the Pittsburgh-Ottawa series back in 2017, the conference final. It's going to be those type of vibes. That one when the game 7 overtime, I think we're going to see something crazy like that happen in this series. I think it's going to come right down to the wire. It's really tough because Vegas is the better team. It's pretty hard to deny that Vegas isn't better. I just think the Montreal Canadiens they're getting such luck. Chandler Stevenson is injured for Vegas, by the way. So they've been able to play all these teams without their first line centers, which is kind of a key component of it.
Yeah.
And I just don't know. I mean, Jeff Petry's eyes sure were kind of scary to look at it.
Yeah, I know. I still haven't fully been clarified there, but I guess there was some sort of.
His wife made a comment about it. They weren't actually bloodshot or anything like that. I think it was just a reaction from whatever medication he was taking.
Yeah. Well, hey, as long as he can see, okay. I mean, he had an assist last night. So
I mean, he looked pretty good too. I mean, Elliot Friedman actually made a little, I guess, in his end of game pressers. Petry even said regarding that, that his kids kind of look of him as like the super villain and them as the heroes now. So it's actually been it's not too as bad as it looked.
Yeah, but as far as Montreal, like both first periods of game 1 and 2, they looked like they were dominating. They were playing way better than Vegas in both first periods. And then, because I think after the first period last night, they were out shooting Vegas by like 12-4 or something like that. And then Vegas caught up real fast in the second period, but Montreal was able to hold on. So if Montreal can come out swinging at the start of every single game in this series and get up a couple of goals, like you said, they might have a chance to take this one to 7, maybe even win, which would be insane. But I still have Vegas winning, just like, because it's hard to see them throw this one away. It really is. So
yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I mean, it's going to be quite fascinating. I mean, Tampa Vegas Stanley Cup final. Wow. That would be quite the most skilled Stanley Cup final I think we've seen in quite some time.
Yeah.
Montreal. I mean, I haven't really seen anyone predict a Montreal Tampa matchup, but that kind of looks like it could. That actually looks kind of likelier by the day, you know? So all 4 of these teams, 7 wins away. Who will prevail? We will find out over these next few weeks. And, you know, Brandon, I just want to say again, it's our 20th episode. We're a 5th of the way to 100. We started doing this now 4 months ago. It's been quite the journey. Obviously, multiple co-hosts have been kind of switched around, but we've been able to make it work. I just wanted to say, you know, it's been pretty great doing this so far.
Yeah, likewise. I've had so much fun. And we don't have a guest tonight, but we will have some really cool guests coming on next week. And the week after that, we have a lot of people we can ask on. So I'm really excited for what the next 20 hold. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, and with that being said, that is all we have for you guys tonight. But we'll be back next week, like I said. So we thank you for joining us this time around. This has been Sabres Scoop, presented by the Hockey Writers. Make sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube, follow and share on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter at Sabres Scoop THW. And once again, make sure you head over to morningskate.io to sign up for our daily Morning Skate newsletter so you don't miss the latest and weirdest hockey news every day. Trust me, it's a good one. I get it every morning. I always know what I'm talking about. That's why we're so knowledgeable on this show here. Don't miss out on all of the great hockey content on thehockeywriters.com. For Jordan, this is Brandon, and this has been Sabres Scoop. Until next time.